Warning. This is the executive producer of the King's Effect podcast, Daron. This episode can be very triggering for viewers at home. Please do not watch this episode if you have experienced suicide or have suicidal ideations at the moment of watching it, or if you prefer not to watch it at all, please do not watch it at all because we will be talking about suicide, my experiences, and a guess. If you prefer not to watch it, please click off the video now. Bye now.
Like pain, now we free from them chains. Heavy hearts, but we're moving through the rain. Three black brothers with the weight on their minds. Till we rise, till we shine, still we grind. From the darkness to the light we claim. Still humble in the struggle, still proud of our name.
Healing and just helping people. So that's just what I do as a whole. That's my mission in life. And so I would say my mission is to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill, to deal with their problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill their purpose. And so has become my mission over the last couple of years. And that's what I press to do, just in different mediums. Like I said, speaking, podcasting, doing some writing that I've done, and then doing this, being on podcasting and sharing the message of hope and healing to everyone that I come across. And so thank you again for allowing me to be a guest, to share my story and some of my thoughts. And I pray that it's a blessing to somebody.
Yeah, and likewise, I do too. It's always interesting to hear, my guests is, doing the work outside of podcasts and stuff like that, because, you want men to look up to you. You want, brothers to know that you're an approachable person. So anytime that if they need help or they need someone to talk to, they have a brother in need. And sometimes brothers don't always have that. And that's what gets us into this topic today is, suicidal ideation. If someone doesn't know what that means, it's just like the thought of taking their own life because maybe they're going through a lot of trauma or they're going through a lot of issues that they don't see, foreseeable answer to. And so when people go through those particular thoughts, I included myself, I've been through that multiple times. Just because I, thought I was not going to be able to pay the rent one time. And I kept asking a lot of people. No one wanted to really help me. Didn't have a lot of support system. I broke up with my ex and just a lot of all of these different things happened, that kind of led me to like, well, who do I turn to if I don't have anybody to go to? And so that's where the suicidal ideations come into play when all of these persisting things come up and you don't have anybody to be in your corner. It doesn't just, you don't, like we was talking beforehand, like it doesn't just start like I wake up and I want to take my life. It's a persisting of things that's leading up to that point that makes you want to do that.
Exactly.
It's really terrible to hear, a lot of stories that brothers have. I have had a close friend that actually did go through with that. And then I've had a friend that was going to go through that, but I talked him out of it. And so it's different layers to it. And I think that this is a very nuanced conversation, but a lot of people don't want to actually kill themselves. That's something that I've been wanting to talk about for a long time. Think about, no one actually wants to go through the act of actually stabbing, killing, shooting themselves, or whatever they're going to do to take themselves out of this life. No one actually wants to do that. They just want a solution to their answer.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts about it here?
I love everything that you just said, because you hit a lot of stuff right on the nail, right on the head of the nail, right? Number one, I like even how you started off by saying that, suicidal ideation is the thought of, wanting to take your own life because you don't see an answer to the problems that you're dealing with. And I think that's important. And I make sure that I even speak on that suicide or the thought of suicide is not about wanting to end your life. It's about wanting to stop the pain, right? It's not an end of life problem. It's a pain problem, right? It's when you're going through so much pain that you don't see a way out of on any front, that you're like, you know what? I can't control it. I can't do anything about it. Right. And so I'd like to start there. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that it is, like you also said, it's multi-layered. There's no one thing, that gets you to that point. It's a multiple of things that get you to that point. The rapper Mos Def wrote a song a couple years ago. It's an older song called Mathematics, but there's one line in the song that I has always stuck with me, and I refer to it often when we're talking about suicide and suicide ideation. But there's a line in the song that says, and I might not be saying it verbatim, but you'll get the message. The straw that broke the camel's back. It's the straw that broke the camel's back. Here's the secret. That's what it is. Okay. The straw that broke the camel's back. Here's the secret. It's not the one on the top. It's the millions underneath it. Right. So
Mhm.
that line speaks to us so much in this case, because a lot of times you can only see the thing that's on the top that the person is dealing with. And if that person was only dealing with that one thing, then it would make sense that, like, that's the only thing that they were dealing with. Then why would they take their own life? But that's the one thing that you saw, or the one thing that you can see, and the one thing that you are aware of. But that's not the layers underneath what they may be dealing with that caused them to get to that point, right? And so I'll start talking about my experience, right? So I did a TEDx talk last year. I think it was last year, maybe the year before, and I talked about my experience with suicidal ideations. And so we'll go back a couple years ago where I was married. um, I had my daughter. I only got one biological child, which is my daughter. But I was married. Me and my wife, we were young. We both were working. Had I bought our first house, and all the toys. I had a truck and a motorcycle, and bought her a car, and doing very well. And doing very well with in our household. But then just life in general at that time, for a period, was very good. And then life started to happen, right? So I'm a bricklayer by trade, as far as my day job, should I say. And so when the economy started changing and we started going through recessions and all of that, well, that affects the construction industry right up front, because we're the one that's building the buildings and the roads and all of that stuff. And so when the country starts changing, that puts a halt on our industry. And so started going into debt, because of that. And as you know, in any marriage or any relationship, money is like one of the top things. You start having money problems, you're gonna start having problems. You know what I mean? And so you start having money problems, and then with that started leading into amplifying other issues, or things that we may had not addressed at that time, even within our marriage. Because when things is going good, when there is a issue, you're like, what, I don't want to bring it up because things are really going good, so I'll just push it back. So when things start going bad, everything start coming out. Now you're addressing issues that you should address years ago. You're addressing problems that you should have addressed months ago. You know what I mean? And things of that nature. But now not only are all these things coming up, but it's coming up at a time where you're already in a place that you're not addressing it from a neutral position, because you're already in the negative. So now you're addressing all of these issues that you should have been addressed, but you're addressing it from the negative as well. So money problems, start having issues in our marriage, and we start talking about divorce. So now that's up. Then my mother-in-law, which was my wife's mom, I was really close to her, and we had a great relationship. Very wonderful woman, and she got sick, and we found out that she had cancer, and she ended up passing away. Um, Not long after that, maybe a couple years after that, my mom got sick, and found out my mom had cancer as well, and then my mom passed away. So during this time period, and I like to say I was living a D life. So I was in debt, I was going through a divorce, I was going through depression. I lost the death of my mother-in-law, who I loved, and my mom, my personal mom, who I loved. All of this at the same time period. So going back to even the line in the song, with the straw that's on the top. Any of those things by itself, I could have dealt with, right? Even the worst of it with my mom passing. While as bad as that is, if that was the only thing I was dealing with, I could have got through it. I won't say easily got through it, but I could have made my way through it. But you add on top of that all of it, which is my mom passing, my mother-in-law passing, going through a divorce, going in debt, already dealing with depression because of all of these other things, all of which I could do nothing about, right? All of which I can't change. And so that's what gets us to that space of feeling hopeless and helpless, because we have all of these issues that's affecting us, that's burdening us down, and we can't change any of it. And so that's where I found myself. I found myself in this place. It's like, man, I can't do anything. I can't do anything. I'm having all of these things that is affecting my life negatively, and I can't change any of it.
Okay. And I have a question. And first of
Mhm.
all, I want to my condolences to your mother. You
Thank
know,
you.
mothers are the backbone of our family. We don't
Yeah.
give them enough credit where the credit is due. And so they do a lot, they endure a lot. Like they have the hardest job in the world, like
Mhm.
pushing the baby out of there. Like it's a lot of stuff that mothers don't get credit for. But I do want to give you credits to the mother, and my condolences to you.
Thank you.
I think there. I want to ask you, like, so with your mother passing and your stepmother passing and just and being in debt, I want to get more deeper into what was your thoughts going into like before you was about to do the deed. Like what was your thoughts like? Were you feeling hesitant? Were you feeling like just get this, like should I just go ahead and hurry up and do it? Or
Yeah.
what what was your thought, your psyche like in that moment?
Well, I think again, it's a building up of helplessness and hopelessness, right?
Mhm,
Because again, like we said, nobody wants to take their life,
mhm.
right? And so it's the answer to of what they really want, which is just to end the pain, right? And so it's like again dealing with the things that you can't control. I can't control that my mom passed, and now I'm feeling this deep hurt. I can't control that my mother-in-law passed, which I'm adds to my hurt. So all of these pain points, is the things that you really want to address. You want to address the pain, but you have no answer for it. I can't bring my mom back. You know what I mean? I can't bring my mother-in-law back. At the point that it got to when we started talking about divorce, pretty much the marriage we were there. You know what I mean? So I can't even restore that. So again, it's all of these things that you can't control that leads you to feel hopeless. Like, what is the common denominator with everything that I'm going through? Me. So if I remove me, then everything else will be good, right? All these different points that affects me. If I'm the common denominator through all of it, if I remove me, then chances are everything else is going to get better. At least
But it
that's what
won't.
we think,
But it
right?
won't.
It definitely won't. And that's another thing that I point out when I'm talking to people about it is that it doesn't end the pain. It doesn't end the pain. It ends your pain, but your pain just transfers to your loved ones that's left behind, right?
Mhm.
Because everything that especially when you take yourself out, because a lot of times no one sees it coming, right? So I remember even after I started becoming more vocal about the fact that I had suicidal ideations, that it had got to that point that I was thinking about doing it. Once I got to the other side of it and I started doing podcast episodes and talking about it, like here I got 8 siblings, right? And so my baby sister called me and she's like, how is it that you went through this whole ordeal where you're thinking about taking your life and none of us know? Like it's 8 of us. Like none of us knew. And I said, well, we weren't having the conversations. And the problem is a lot of times when we are in that space, we're not having a conversation. We're not talking to other people. We're not, exposing or releasing the fact like this is how I'm feeling. And because we isolate ourselves and we make ourselves feel like we're the only one, then we really do believe like we're the only one. Like I'm the only one that's dealing with this. I'm the only one that's hurting. I'm the only one that's in this space. And a lot of times it's because we make ourselves the only one because we pull back away from everybody. right? And so, my sister, when she called me and she said that, and I'm like, that's why we're not having the conversations. And so now I'm very adamant about, again, speaking out about my experience, speaking out about, how I was feeling, what I was dealing with, so that other people that finds themselves in that space can now have a voice and feel free enough to have the voice to speak out, before they get to that space. But
Mm-hmm.
it's really, like I said, it's not about wanting to end your life. It's about wanting to stop the pain. And when you get under enough pain, then it's sometimes, you start to feel like that's the only answer. Because again, you're the common denominator of all of these issues that you're dealing with. But also I want to point out that yes, you are the common denominator, but look at it from a different space. Because if you're the common denominator, and even though now you're in a bad space, what's going to happen when you get into a great space? Now you're bringing that energy and that love to all of these different places that you're the common denominator of. And so not only do you bring, joy back into your life, but you bring it back into the lives of your loved ones and the lives of the people that you're in contact with. And even though in the midst of it, that's hard to see sometimes, but it's a reality. And if we start to look at it that way, again, it just gives us that little glimmer of hope that, let me try my best to make it through this, because once I make it through, then I can have a positive impact on all of these areas and all of these people in my life.
Mm-hmm. But before I get into my suicidal, what I was gonna do, I wanted to ask you, like, I know you was just going through a lot of issues, but like, what mode of, like, because usually people have a plan, like, I'm gonna, write a letter and then I'm gonna jump off a cliff, or I'm gonna shoot myself in the head. Like, what form of method were you thinking? What did you want to do as seamless as possible, or did you wanted to go through the pain more?
Well, so I think it was kind of twofold, because I don't think that I really got to the point where I started planning. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? But I did have a thought, because it always starts with a thought. And
Mm-hmm.
I probably would think that maybe two thoughts that came to mind with me was maybe um, shooting myself,
Mm-hmm.
or in a car accident, causing an accident in
Mm-hmm.
in a vehicle. So I will say that those two thoughts probably did come to mind. But luckily for me, I didn't get so far down that rabbit hole that I actually started planning it out, um, because I started looking for help, and then I had help come to me through my friends and loved ones that literally came to my aid and started to pull me out of that space. Even coming to my house and saying, "We're getting out the house. We're getting out the house today. We're going to the park," or whatever. Like physically coming to get me. And so I started to come out of that space. So I never got far enough down where I physically like really started planning it out. Um, but I did, of course, like I said, it starts with a thought. So once you start having those thoughts, the first thought is the thought of doing it. Then that second thought generally is, okay, how? And I think once we pass the how is really when if we want to say it's a three-step process. The first step will be the thought, the second step will be the how. And then once we pass that how, that's when we're really in dangerous territory, because now it's like execution. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like how we go, let's do it. And so we never want to get to that third step. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I had some bad news. I've almost, got to that. Well, I actually was planning to get to that step, that third
Mhm.
step. I was just going through a lot, with my ex and with, just friends and family, and just being able to not be able to cope with life. And, I felt, and I had a lot of breakups with my friends. Like, I couldn't, felt like I couldn't trust them. It was a lot. I was talking to my one friend, and he just kept lying repeatedly. He kept telling me he was going to pay me back, and I really needed that money back,
Yeah.
And he kept telling me, no, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And then he tried to guilt trip me into believing that he was more depressed than I was, because he was like, I'm going to kill myself. I'm going to kill myself. I can't afford to give you this money right now. And so he was using that as a form of manipulation to not give me back the money. And then I got more depressed, and then just dealing with my past trauma with my father, and
Mhm.
dealing with my trauma with my auntie, all of the hell that I went through with them. And
Yeah.
I talked about this earlier, earlier in the season on my podcast. And just being able to not cope with all of that and feeling like you don't have anybody with me, I went into the devil can is very real. Okay,
Yeah.
let's put it that
Yeah.
way. The
Yep.
devil is very real. And I went into the kitchen, opened the drawer, and was about to slit my wrist. I was about to do that, and something stopped me. you know I think it was the spirit. I think it was the Holy Spirit that stopped me.
Mhm.
And it's like, no, you'd have come too far. You're 25 years old back then, 6 years ago.
Right.
And I was like, I cried so hard. Like, that was like a moment like I never thought, you know, we have a lot of mental illness in our family.
Mhm.
And I never thought I would get to that point where I would actually go into the kitchen, open up the drawer, pull out the knife, and actually was about to
Yeah.
do it. I was living with my mother at the time. I been couldn't provide as a man, and just having
Yeah.
so many financial issues and stuff like that. I was like, there was nothing left for me. Um, but then things started to come together. So
Mhm.
I put the knife down, put it back in the drawer. I was like, there was a sign from this Holy Spirit that you got more to live for.
Mhm.
That wasn't the devil, because if that was the devil, I would have did the deed.
Right.
And because he doesn't care,
Yeah.
he wants me to do that so I can go straight to hell. And when I put the knife back in the drawer, I was like, thank you, thank you. I just remember that day, and I'm just like, it was terrifying for me. I never
Yeah.
thought that I would get to that point in my life. And then
Yeah.
now to put some more good news on it, that was a little bit depressing for me. Um, the next day, I received a phone call, and because I was looking for a job too in the process, because it was hard trying to find a job.
Mhm.
And it's like, we want to hire you. After 6 months of not being unemployed, didn't know where I was going to get my next meal from, how I was going to pay my rent, and all of that.
Yeah.
It's like, thank God, things is finally turning around.
Yeah.
But I just think back to that day, that dark day. That was a really dark, one of the darkest days I ever had. If I would have went through with that, and then I would have got the call the next day, I would have never been able to answer that, right?
Right.
So I
Yeah.
always tell my friends that, think about when it's going to get better. Put
Yeah.
it in perspective like that. Think about when it's going to get better. You may not know how it's going to get better or when it's going to get better, but it can't rain forever, you know?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
that was my situation. That was my story. That
Yeah.
if I could help someone to do that, then I know that there's more to life than just me. We're
Yeah.
here. I believe we're here down here to help and share our stories and support each other. Then there
Yeah.
was another case where I had my friend where he wanted to kill himself. And so I had to literally, this was the same friend that I was not going to be friends with, because I
Mhm.
didn't want to hear that gunshot go off on the phone.
Right.
Let's put that way. Like, I was trying to do every little thing I can. And just to give you a little bit of context before that got to the point, he was a friend that I thought he was good in the beginning. We supported each other. We helped each other out. But then as I got in my up in my career, and he started to,
Mhm.
he got a demotion, and he started to feel some type of envy and jealousy, and felt like I was entitled just because of what I made on my job. He was entitled to that. Just
Yeah.
because we're friends, that don't mean I worked hard for that money to get to where I
Yeah.
was at.
Been
You
there.
you didn't you did not work as hard as
Mm.
I did, because there were times where you would call off, blatantly call off, and that you were supposed to be there, but you said, I'm just gonna lie and do that and all that. But the point of the story is, like, he started to become unmotivated, jealousy, and envious and all of this stuff. And I'm like, if we would have just talked things out, we probably would have never got to this point. And this was another dark moment in my life where I was like, I hurt him. 8 o'clock. He's like, man, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I don't know what I'm gonna do. I got all these bills paying up and all that. You calling off the work, that's not helping. All of these different things and the circumstances is leading you to your own detriment. Talk
Mhm.
about that. We don't realize sometimes we are an impediment of our own selves, the
Yeah.
things that we do. But he kept calling off of work. He kept coming up for excuses, kept getting jobs, and then get mad with me when I stayed there and got a promotion. That's not my problem that you can't do that. But at the moment, you don't tell people that when
Right.
you're suicidal. Like, you don't go through all of their shit. That's just another time and another place to do that.
Right.
The moment you're thinking about is how you can get them to not do that, right? That deep.
Right.
So I had to really talk him out of this. I'm like, I know this is tough for you, Anthony. I know this is tough for you, and we've been through a lot together as boys. But I'm gonna need you not to do this, man. I know it's tough right now. I know that you just pressed over money, and it doesn't help me that you trying to you need to get the money back to give to me. Doesn't help
Mhm.
that. But we can work through all of this together. I
Right.
don't want you to feel like if you don't give me the money that you're gonna do what you need to do, because you had a lot of other issues going on too. I'm not
Right.
the only one, but I'm willing to work with you.
To allow us to do it. And sometimes as men, we don't allow ourselves to be in that position where we can, because we're always trying to hold up this image of being, macho and whatever. So I acknowledge you for that. Um, for one, but then also to be able to, you mentioned about, thinking about if you had have done that, if you had have went through with the act of it, and then you got that phone call the next day, you know what I mean? And so I don't know if you ever heard the story or even seen the image it's on Facebook a lot, and it's about, it's in the, let's go with the image first. So there's an image with a man who's he has a pick, and he's picking in this cave trying to get to these diamonds, right? And he's, working away. And there's one guy who's almost just like at the beginning of his journey, and he's picking, and then you got the other guy who's actually turns around, and he's walking back out of the cave, but he's like maybe like 3 hits away from the diamonds. You know what I'm saying? And that image is, a lot of times when we get to the point where we give up, that's really the point of our breaking spot. Like, that's really the point where we're about to receive everything that we've working for. But because we've been working so hard, because we're trying to get to that spot, it's like, oh man, it's never going to come. When the truth is, it's right there. It's right there. And so that's the point where you were at, that day before that phone call. You were at the space where it's like, everything that I'm praying for, everything I'm believing for, everything that I'm working for is one day away. You know what I'm saying? But today I can't see it, and today it may not feel like it, and today I'm going through, and it's like, oh my God, I just been day after day, and I really need this. But that one more day, you're one day away from everything that you were working for, everything that you were trying to receive. So I thank God for the Holy Spirit for coming to you that day, for allowing you to just be like, all right, no, just hold on. You know what I mean? We made it this far. Yes, it's been hard, but just hold on. There's better coming tomorrow. And I, again, as we know, our stories, like you said, our stories, our gift of life that we have is to share our stories and our experiences to help others. And so I didn't know you then. You know what I'm saying? If you had ended it that day, we wouldn't be here today. You know what I'm saying? We wouldn't be here sharing this conversation. Number one, to help other men, to help other Black men, to talk about mental health. I wouldn't be able to share my experience had I carried out my experience. I wouldn't be able to sit here and have this conversation with you. All of this is divinely ordered and divinely put in place. We are blessed to be a blessing, and sometimes we are called to go through certain things, and we don't know why we were chosen to go through that thing. And I think about the story of Job. Job was chilling, like he's like, I got my family, I got my money, I got my kids, I'm good. And we look at the story and we read the story of Job. Job didn't volunteer. He didn't volunteer for it, and the devil didn't suggest him. God suggested him. God said, have you considered my servant? You know what I'm saying? So just even if we think about that from that point of, yes, I'm going through all of these different trials and tribulations, but what if God is in heaven and God said, I'm going to say, hey, test Ernest because I believe in Ernest. You know what I'm saying? I
Mhm.
believe that he has enough to make it through this whole situation, that once he makes it through now, his voice can be heard by the masses to bring hope and healing, just as Job was. And so if we start to look at it in that light, especially as believers, we start to look at our situations and our circumstances and those in that light, that maybe, just maybe, God chose me for this because he has the faith in me. A lot of times we always talk about the faith that we have in God. Well, how much faith that God has to have in you to allow you to go through this situation, to allow you to go through, knowing that, you know what, I'm gonna test Ernest. I'm gonna let him go through this. And once he gets on the other side, now he's gonna become a podcaster and a speaker and be on all these different podcasts and different stages, telling people and sharing his story, doing a TEDx talk to talk about surviving suicide and ideation, so other men, other Black men, other people would be able to listen to his story, that he made it through, and know that they can make it through as well.
Let me go
So
ahead and call you Pastor or Ernest. It's not a test without a testimony. We go through trials and tribulations because we want to, because we have to, because God is testing us in our worst possible moment. He already knows what's going to go down. He sees, he hears, he knows what's going to go down. He knows that no matter what goes down in this life, we are strong, every last one of us. But when we give in to the temptations and the devilness, that's when we get weak.
mhm,
But he knows us. He created us. He's the almighty magnificent being. He created us for a reason, and he put us down here to help and support each other and know that things are going to get better. There's no test without a testimony. You got to go
amen.
through the tests so you
Yep.
can be able to share your experiences and help other people. But there's some resources that I would like to share, and hopefully you could like to share about if people are experiencing, to end this on the positive note. Um, 988 is a first call for help where they have trained nurses and clinicians to kind of help on support 24/7 if you are feeling like you're going through this. And it might also help to join some, so a lot of men's mental health groups, because I'm in a lot of men's
Mhm.
mental health groups, and I have a lot of brothers that I can call on that's probably up 12 or 1 o'clock in the morning, you know,
Yep.
when I might be experiencing something, that I can talk to them, so they can talk me out of that moment. Those are very powerful. Like, I'm in 8 different men's mental health groups. Just because sometimes you need that extra support. You're never too strong. And I always say, check on my strong friends too.
Yeah.
Because believe me, they're not as strong as you think they are.
Right. Yeah.
They're really not. But
Yeah.
what's some
So
resources to kind of wrap this up here? What's some resources that maybe that maybe I don't know that you know?
well, I definitely, the suicidal hotline, we definitely want to, again, the 988, to put that out there, because that's the quickest line of defense for all of us, right? Because all of us have phones, and that's just a phone call away for all of us. But another thing that you mentioned is about the communities. Find the community that works for you, and find multiple. Don't just rely on one. Um, so yeah, I think those two things would be a good place to start. And as far as different resources that I personally put out myself, you guys can check out my uh, podcast, one, which is the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. And so on that podcast, my guests and I talk about topics and ways to help us heal in every area of our lives. And so right now we have over 200 episodes that's up. So we have addressed, suicide ideation. We've addressed, domestic violence. We've addressed an array of different topics, with myself and other guests, speakers and coaches, to help us to heal, in all these areas. And so, you guys can check that out, as well as I have a private Facebook page, Facebook channel called the Deal to Heal community. Deal Heal Fulfill community on Facebook, that you guys could also reach out there and to join that community, where again it's a lot of support in those spaces, and that's kind of like like I said at the beginning, my whole thing is to help people, as much as I can. And so those are just ways that I put out, to help. And the last thing I would say, the last resource, I wrote a ebook called Forgiving Me, the 4-step guide to self-forgiveness. And I think that when we get into these spaces where we started, having these thoughts of suicidal ideations, a lot of times it's because we're holding grudges against ourselves for some of the mistakes and things that we've made in the past. That, and for things that I haven't been through, I bring on other guests to address those issues, in order to bring help for my audience. And so he was like, wow, that's interesting. And so then he began to share some of his story with me. And he talked about, having suicidal ideations himself, having his father having suicidal ideations, and his father actually going through with it, and him being the one who found his father's body, And so we had this moment where we're, just sharing. And so we break, we go to lunch. We have like a 45-minute lunch, and then we come back. When we come back, what he says to me, he's like, Ernest, you're a really cool guy, and you're easy to talk to, because what I just told you, I've never told anybody, right? And I say that to bring it to you because you mentioned about not always feeling safe to share your story, but there's so much power in your story, even if it's just to give one other person the space to be vulnerable enough to admit what they're dealing with, especially as men. You know, we had that conversation that day, and we see each other on the job still. And we always, hey, how you doing? Whatever. We never really talked like that since that one day. But I don't even know the effect that one day had on him, to be able to not only get things off his chest, but not only to be able to be vulnerable enough and create a space that was safe enough for him to express that. But I believe that that's what you've created here. You've created a space here that's safe enough for us as men to be able to say, this is what I'm dealing with. And a lot of times it just take that first voice, that one voice, to say, this is what I dealt with. This is how I got through it. You can get through it as well. And then that creates the space for now me to come to be a guest and say, you know what, I understand, because this is my story. But it starts with you telling your story. So again, I congratulate you. I appreciate you for having the strength to share your story, not only just here, but share it to the world, because it's going to bring so much healing to other men and other people that are having these same thoughts and dealing with these same pains. So again, I thank you for allowing me to be a guest on your show, and I definitely appreciate you allowing me to be here.
Yes, likewise. But I'm going to end this now and just stay online here.
No problem.